Yeah.
Hey, question, do you have a piece of sandpaper?
I think I do. Where is it? Here's one. Oh, there's one here. You need a lot?
I can't even take it.
Yeah, you should have here. Yeah, you can't not have sandpaper.
What?
You need sandpaper.
Yeah.
Everybody needs sandpaper. Just don't make a mess, though. Keep it neat.
Sorry.
Right. Okay. Doo-doo. Hello. Back at Alpha, back over the mask on. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
All right. Yeah, it's what strange weeks these are. You never know what you're going to be encountering. So Anna, are you off? You're off of self quarantine now, right? Yeah. Good. Excellent. Good. Excellent. Yeah. So I think everything's straight with Medusa, so everything seems good. So I think we're on target here. So we'll just give it a couple minutes here, see if somebody else shows up, and if not, we'll go into the lecture for today, and then launch in on our pieces for today. So bear in mind today that you're coming down on the last two classes for the work, and since this is being done in class, this is what we're really going to launch on. And think about as you're building it today, what would start to make it look like we're getting it finished, what's going to be accomplished. And that can be really, really the goal. Try not to just spread everything around equally like you would in the beginning. It's more of like bringing up your focal points. And what I've been stressing along is this idea of creating a focal point, and that's a big part of composition. This idea that, how do you lead the viewer into your painting? How do they move from one piece to the next? And often light does that, color does that, brushwork, activity, hierarchies. And that's, I think many of you are handling that really well. Today I'm going to lecture about the memory and imagination. So work that's going to be coming less from the observed and more from, when we remember something, how foggy it is, how unclear it is, and how we have another set of expectations of that. And then in some cases, where an artist might start that way, but then end up another way. So it's not always this idea that when you start as an artist, you start purely representationally, and then as you finish your career, you're more abstract or what we love to call personal. Sometimes it's the reverse. And I'll give you an example of an artist that was the case. All right, good. So we have a pretty good group on now. So let me go to the share then, and we'll keep going. So I wanted to say, that paintings, done from imagination or other sources, but then also this idea that, as I'll explain as I go on, sometimes it is from its own. So probably the most obvious example is when you're looking at Faith Ringgold, who is primarily an artist who does quilts and things with other media. When doing illustrations, this is from this really great book on Henry Ossawa Tanner that Faith illustrated. And I love this idea of documenting parts of Henry's life being done this way. But you can see just from stylization of things, that it's more imagination. But we also might call, in this case, something less refined or more childlike. But because it's in the illustration category, you can kind of push those boundaries. But there is some things that are very traditional about it too, as far as the weighting, the balance on either side, the fact that this might have just one figure that says two, but the paintings and the easels take up two here, so it becomes this very symmetrical composition. But then there's an asymmetry, both from three, uneven, bigger gap, closer together, a type of thing that starts to move your eye around as well. Details as they come from the foreground to the back. And then, let's see. And so this is another example, we're just purely the imagination, and even down to this idea that the land will start to vary a lot as it goes through. And then Horace Pippin. Horace Pippin, was well used now as an example of somebody, in this category. But I think we're just getting to the, we keep exploring new avenues with this artist, and then, the idea that he's a local artist, somebody that lived out in Chester County, and then the way that he'd work and document people's everyday lives. And so this idea of the person being bathed, this is on a piece of wood, so it's very it's darkened a bit over the years. But I love the way that this symbolism of that nurturing, kind of almost cradling, like Christ descending from the cross. But then this idea of all the bathing and cleansing. But then the crudity of these big bar of soap, this heat source coming from the stove, and then these very colorful items from the coffee kettle to these hanging elements around, and the fact that this person would be washed in the middle of the living room. But compositionally, this is really a very centered composition. The figures are almost direct center with the heads being there, but they're in action. They're not posing. They're not frozen in motion. They're like a little splice of the time of day. And so they get that. And then, the way that this artist deals with the interiors, having these be the figurative elements or sculptures, the framing of the windows, the table as it's tilted, and then, this very darkened interior, of course, darkened more because of the wood, but it's also, this idea of it existing in a whole nother dimension and everything else, and then that very centered floral, uneven drapery, even though it's pretty balanced, and then the tree being bare on one side and then not on the other. But I think these sculptures really create that. This is just too blurry. This is a Pippin that was brought into the collection recently at the Philadelphia Museum from Daniel Dietrich. And this park bench, depiction, having this person as an everyday subject, but then this white squirrel, so that, getting this idea that that squirrel is going to be included, the leaves as they come down, but then some of the blooming in there. But then again, the figure as the subject, and then the arm being up, so there's a relaxed mode, hand in the pocket, looking off to the side. So we as viewers aren't really that engaged. I'm not so sure if you can notice too, there's another bench back here. So it becomes like this sequence of benches, but then there's no path going to that one. But we're on the path in here. So it really is a pretty typical park bench thing. Grandma Moses, so Grandma Moses is another one where everything was done directly from her imagination, but because of that, it almost looks like a map. The perspective's tilted. You're seeing a great deal of distance in here, a ton of information down from all the specific buildings from the town in upstate New York where she painted this. Felling Christmas trees, finding the wood, neighbors coming, traveling, people playing on the tree that was cut, presumably from that. And then this kind of home and hearth kind of idea. So there is a kind of a nice quality here where you don't see a huge change from the foreground, middle, and background, but because things overlap, and they generally get smaller as they go back, and there's mountains in the far distance, we do kind of know where they're coming from. This one is her actual home with two people coming to it, and this being off to the side. I love that fence being included, but again, this could be done from life, but there's a nice quality to that going through. So it's a pretty typical invented work. Now this is work that's a little bit less obvious that way. So this close cropping that Raoul Dufy put in there starts to really change some definitional points of view for us. So the way that we can look down and simultaneously away, this idea that this is cubistic. There's even a bend in the violin as it's going. And then of course your Mozart symbolism, which again, music reference, and then the sheet music coming up here. So it's coming from Cubism, from something observed, but easily manipulated. It's not going to be this idea of just a strict perspectival idea. Compositionally, obviously, the red is your binder here, the off center of this figure, the figure looking, and then this violin is just past the halfway point, and then this big triangular shape towards the center there, which becomes then your defining mode. Franz Marc, doing some of these watercolors that they would do during the times of the Nazi occupation because they needed their paints to dry faster. They, after all, were degenerate artists. And so this, you can see the elephant, and then these kind of loosely formed landscape elements. But these become, again, very stylized and rhythmic and less about the actuality of it. And so these rhythms, movement, symbols of the fidelity of the elephant itself. And then as it's moving into this space as a whole, so it becomes like these concentric circles. And so working more from imagination allows that. Marston Hartley worked a lot in his this sense of his memories from Maine, even though he was living throughout the world. Maine would be always present, and sometimes it would start from drawings, other times it would be embellished, but this old dock with the lobster traps, the ships in those days as they were going back, and then of course this big still to give you this place in front. So again, it could have been completely observed, but we know that there's a lot of invented elements in here, so it starts to take it away from that. But it's also in this very traditional sense of space, horizon, foreground. I still like that, it's very close. And then the dock, which would be huge, we'd only take up this much space, ends up being quite large in composition, and of course the ship as well, because that could just be bigger. And if you're thinking more in a Byzantine way, that could come through. Then we've got a perspective of coming out of a triangle with this book, these elements in here. Color associations, blues, the yellows, and then the greens as they mix in, and then this being outwardly because we want to know, but the shape being similar to the cloud. So all that kind of starts to move this motif as it goes around. John Marin, one of my favorites, working in the cubistic mode, but also doing a lot with cityscape and how things rhythmically go around in this, oculus, and then letting it turn and curve and break. But he doesn't break it up enough in the cityscape where you'll be very aware of all the different facets, but he alludes to it. Romare Bearden. So they've been talking a lot about Romare Bearden at some of the lectures here at PAFA. And this is collage, so some of you are embarking on collage, which is fun. But it's great to have this pure pattern like this coming purely out of the collage. And then some of the other painted elements collage down. And then things drawn on top of that. So it becomes this layered sense of where it sits. But as far as the scene goes, it's extremely traditional. You've got a studio interior, the model posing, the artist off to the side with the paintbrush, the work on the easel, and then the paintbrush off to the side, and then the drawing midway. So there's really nothing groundbreaking about this itself, but it's, as a matter of fact, artist with painting and model. I mean, it's pretty great. I love that title. I think it's so funny. And then, so we got Mill Hands Lunch Bucket. So collage of cut paper, fabric, and watercolor and graphite. So it's just almost like a joy to go in and find these points of reference in there. But of course, it is mostly about this interaction of the workers and the heroism of them, what they do in the back, this interior, and then this fellow on his way, and the stove. But the way these patterns are used with blockiness around it, and then within the texture, symbolism of the chair, but very detailed when you get back to the factory. So we have no doubt where that mill hand is heading. A mill is being depicted. Then you've got someone like Charles Birchfield, who used a lot of symbols that represented different things. So all these different symbols are representing different things to him, which he's coded. And so they mean envy, sloth, tired, joy, summer, movement, melancholy, all these things are put in there. And so you're very aware of these kind of things invigorating the scene, but we're not always aware unless you've got that code book right next to it to kind of come in here. Birchfield felt that when we're looking at it, we could assess all that, and I think there's truth to that, but not to the level we really want until it's really in there. So if he wasn't inventing or using his imagination for this, it wouldn't be as successful. But if he also didn't have the subject of the yard or the building, he wouldn't have been able to extrapolate from that to get it. But very different than something like Graham and Moses. This one is much more turning the scene foreboding, because again, these traceries of the different evening creatures, and then the darkness as it comes in, flowers that are still present, but they all of a sudden become more humanoid. That this becomes a studio endeavor that goes to that next level, which is, creating a depth there. Now, here's the artist I was talking about. This is Sidney Goodman. He was actually one of my teachers. This is a watercolor from early in his career, 1960, and this is depicting the longest ride, and it was actually depicting an accent that he was in, and he almost died. And so he really thought about mortality in his 20s, and was really very shocked by it. And so he wanted to create this struggle and this kind of overlapping of it. But at this point, he was working completely from his imagination. From that event that actually happened, you see the car interior, you see the figure at the driving wheel, but then you start to see the ghostly kind of qualities and this sense of where it's going to go. But where he ended up in his later career was into this naturalism, and he kept on to the idea of invention. But here, this was a tractor pull that happened at a farm show, and he wanted to show this grouping of figures. He was thinking about all throughout history, people would be often congregating towards something. And he didn't want to show you. He didn't want it to be the pole that you'd see in the tractors in their death struggle to try to win. He wanted to have this sense of these figures existing, cars that are very dated, clothing that's very dated, and these strong contrasts with this chiaroscuro, but have it be so much about that. Notice the size, it's 66 inches by 144. So, I mean, these were epic paintings. And then Richard Dincorn on the top here from observation, and then Philip Gusta. I want to show this as two different approaches, because again, this is not memory invention, this is pure observation, but this is completely invented. And Gusta, in the last 10 years of his life, worked with these very specific symbols that represented parts of what he saw as artists' failings and vices. And so he came up with the humanoid kind of creature of this shoe with this leg, and then you'd have these different points, and this is like trying to encounter a ladder to go to somewhere else. And so everything became like this moment in story. And it was this really crazy output that he did, but it all manifests itself in these kind of R-chrome comic strips. And so Martha Armstrong was a contemporary artist, just had a show for us with Cleve in January. Works mostly from observation, but let some of the inventiveness of abstraction take over. So the intensities of the colors, when she sees a kind of purplish trunk, puts it in as purple. The light as it sits aside would be pure yellow, but then be very specific as it goes over here, from the tree to the ground plane to the railing, and let it go back and forth. And fantasy imagination, just David Salee and Ronnie Couch at the bottom, which is much more animated. Salee came out of animation, but it was still like these juxtaposition of these figures. It almost like a memory dream state again, so it wasn't so literal. And these are, of course, your cartoon characters, but it becomes like this space, pattern, exaggerated color, movement, symbolism coming out of history and mythology. And then this one, the secret flower, the sweetest flower, I mean. And so this is this whole symbolism coming out of this that lies on her, like we're ultimately frost upon the sweetest flower of the field, Shakespeare. So this was redone from that sonnet. And so this kind of longing of something that's not attainable, this distance, the bold and these things, but very, very much in a specific symbolic reference. And then an artist, there's an upstate New York artist that I've known for most of my career, Sarah McCoubrey, does these depictions of the landscape in upstate New York, actually in my hometown. And she has these tufts of land being taken away inexplicably, almost like saying, okay, if something's going to survive, let's take a portion of it and move it and try to save it. But there's nothing threatening down here. It doesn't make you think that, oh my God, there won't be another opportunity. And then this is the most recent work where she's working with, it's called Potato Flight, photo mixed media. This is a photograph manipulated, and then she put this through Photoshop with potato, and then put a little propeller on there with the roots coming through, and then the land is starting to rebuild on top. So she started with that one idea of trying to hold on to nurture life, and then turn it into this sense of where it could go. So memory and imagination really allows that. So that was just, not that I want you to scrap everything you're doing and bring that into what you're doing here. I'm just saying this is a way of where can we go with these things, what happens when you become adept at all these applications, what can happen. And these are some good examples of that. From something that stays more realistic to something that's extremely inventive to more abstract and more color. And it's all this stuff, and the good news of today is there's an intense plurality. So everything's possible. So right now, if you were to, you know, like Vanessa's doing on her piece, you know, go a little bit further and you know, take this scene and restructure it so it becomes like a beach. That becomes like another offshoot of a story you want to tell versus just a setup as we have it. All right, so let me start off by going around and seeing where you guys are. And if you want to stay on and look in, hearing what we're talking about, great. You know, more than welcome. And then I'll check in with you again. So we have today and we have next week working from the model. And then the last week, which is the first week in May, what is that? No, I've lost my calendar. Oh, it's like the 4th or something. That'll be our last class, and we'll do a critique on that class. All right, so I can't believe we're winding down here. Oh, I was off one day, it's the 3rd. So, May 3rd. People are starting to hang their walls here at Papa. So pretty exciting. They've got everything prepared over in the historic building. So I'm going to go over there later and check in on them. And so things are really moving along here. So it's hard to believe we're just weeks away. Woo! Crazy, huh? Crazy. So we've been working in class. We're working, you know, in time here. So what is due is what we've done in class for that. Okay, we're not looking for a whole bunch of extrapolation around it. I want you to build off of that, and that's what you're going to be showing me for your final critique. So you should have 3 pieces, maybe 4 if you include some studies, and that will be your final work. Okay. Years past, I was giving assignments at the end of everything, but we decided that if you're going to be doing a synchronized class, the work gets done in class. So that's why that changed, if anyone's wondering. So that's how that sort of shifts. Some of them are going to be asynchronistic, and they're going to have everything done outside, therefore you'll have outside projects because you have that. Okay? So let me start off with Vanessa, and then you know you guys get going, and I'll work my way around the room, and then we'll get going. Okay? So Vanessa, that's such a grand Vanessa. I like what you ended up with on the beach too. I thought that worked out pretty well. Do you have that beach study nearby? Oh yeah, that worked out great. And it really did teach you a lot about what color that sand would be and how to incorporate elements in there, didn't it? Oh yeah, definitely. I'm excited to break that. Yeah, I think that looks good, and I like the way that you have those really buoyant clouds. You still have that opening, and then you're building down to such a big kind of cove, and then of course you have the building off in the distance, so it really holds it. So now incorporating that into a figure piece, I think that really made a difference. So you're now really able to build up that light that now reacts to the mid figure. You got that color of sand right now in that background. Water's not too dark, looks good, nice transition. Any thought about including some clouds? You did them well. You might want to put some of those in.
Yeah, I think I will now. It's like, I don't know, it was my first time really doing them like last semester, but
Yeah,
I don't think we did any like
no,
stuff like so yeah, I
yeah.
think I can now.
Yeah, I think you did well with it, and you kept it nice and violety at that horizon, and then blue at the top. Oh, and Medusa, we're ready. Yeah, I'm just starting off talking to them individually, but they can get started. So I forgot. I'm sorry. I was just thinking. I just moved on to the next thing. Um, so yeah, start with that lying down, so then we'll all set.
Sure thing.
So Vanessa, get one pause, let me get her set up, and then we'll go back right back to you. Okay. The only thing I want you to think about is that leg as we're going. So think about how you're going to talk to me about that. And yeah, and exactly. And then we'll talk a little bit about immigration. But I'll get it set up, make sure it's there first, and then get right back to you. Yeah, we're going to get a lot of clicking in the skylights today.
Oh yeah, the air is interesting outside.
It really is.
It's
The wind's picking up. It's not as warm as it's supposed to, but this afternoon it's going to get real warm.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Okay. Huh. That's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, we're really in spring weather here. I neatened up a bit. Did you see?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they were complaining a bit because they were bringing tours through, and things were a little messy.
Too many tools.
I know, so I was like, things were too active.
Sit there.
Yeah.
Sit.
The top leg is over the lower leg, and the lower leg's tucked in a little bit more. So yeah, that's good. Good. And then the arm is up a little bit higher, like forward.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. Good. And then you're tucked in there, the arm's in there, lights on there. Excellent. Okay, good. We're good. Right, first call. Sorry, Vanessa. Back to you. So yeah, let's look at that leg. So you did soften that musculature in there from the last time. I definitely see that. But how do you? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, good. So it does look softer. Then maybe it's because of the whiteness of the sand behind. Could be that. But I think what you're alluding to is the difference between that lateral head of the quadriceps and then what would happen with biceps femoris going into the gluteus. And so I just think you have to be careful with that linear part of it. It's like too linear. Got it. Okay. 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 Yeah, I think that's a good idea. You have the mirror right there, and you can see it. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. And then it could also go into a little bit of this idea of invention too, which would be fun. That you like use it as a starting point and then go from that. But to be honest with you, as you're building something, even if you're working it from life, you're still inventing it some from knowledge. It's not always exactly what somebody sees, because what is it at any given moment? We learn that from the landscape. Things are always in flux, you know. So, and then I like that reflected light coming into those legs as they're bent and down, and kind of purpley. I think that looks good. But be careful about how then that relates to the near drapery that would mean that usually there's a glow onto the drapery and more of a shadow. And then the arm, as it comes over, that would create more of a shadow with the raking from the side. Have you decided where your light's coming from? Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. And then the large expanse of that beach is good because there's kind of this nice openness to it. But it also means there's a lot of space in there. Right. You could do that. You could do that, and having like a scale shift could be good, like little bits off to the side. Umbrellas could be good. Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. But overall, it's looking great. So I think it's good. It's holding together now. Just be careful of the amount of paint you keep on there. There's two camps of thought at Pop right now. It's the paint heavers and it's the paint manipulators. I fall into the paint manipulator category. So, the more paint you get on there, sometimes you're just stuck with it almost like it's cement on a wall. And I don't know, you're not going to be able to articulate a lot with that. So, see where that's going to go. Like, I'm not nervous if I see some paint underneath that's good or some brown. That's a plus in my book. That's a bit of a plus. All right, let's see. Who's next? Kate, you're next on the tile selection.
Hi, how are you?
Good, I'm doing more fine. I had my second shot on Tuesday of last week, and I had a wild reaction. It was like crazy. So I'm just kind of coming back to some sort of normal. Yeah, it's been like a week. So, but hey, the good news is another week will be fully vaccinated, so that'll be good. I know, fun, right? I know. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is really fun to look at. So we were last week we were doing images from photographs and building on them, and you got yours pretty far along. So I think what we got to think about with yours is I think there's a beautiful coloration, a beautiful sense of light, a nice sense of design as those figures exist in there. But what do we want the viewer to walk away from with? If you're looking at that, what do we want to walk away with? Because that's going to kind of direct you going forward now. Because I could go in there and say, okay, the lying down figure, let's get a more of the turn of the front abdomen, make sure that leg feels like it's overlapping the other one as it emphasizes a little bit more and past the shadow, bring some folds in that big swag that's going to come underneath, lessen the swag in the back. I mean, that's all part of making space, right? And trying to get it, and it's important. But it's also like, where do we want to kind of come at with this? Where are we going with it? Do you want people to think color? Do you want people to think the figures? Do you want people to think the story of the figures as they're moving around it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, probably I feel like in terms of the kind of work that I'm usually interested in making, I kind of want to be centered around the figures, although right now I have like found myself loving working with these colors, especially in this class.
Right.
I feel like everything that I do, I end up really pushing the color in like a most impressive way, which is like really great because I normally kind of super muted.
Oh, good. Well, then that's a really nice change. I'm glad to hear that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. With like this whole class, I wanted to. That's fun.
Oh yeah, look at that, that texture, yeah. Yeah.
Everything else is like more and it's like all bright.
Kate, that's unbelievable. I wouldn't even said that that was his, oh my God. Kate, that is crazy. Hey, you know what? Congratulations for being so open that you're giving these different things a go. I think that's so great. Well, okay, well, you're going to become the poster child then for, this idea of what can happen when you expand your possibilities. Oh my God. All right, well, great. This gives me a completely different perspective then. So I would then say, what we want to leave this painting with is that intensity of color. So let's not mute that. Let's think about what colors could represent a darker yellow, what would represent a lighter yellow, what would start to give this sense of coloration within the figures. Like obviously you have the red top that the model's wearing, but what about if you thought about purples and rich earthy reds and some ochres and some yellows for some of those lights? That could start to really bring that. And you get that same kind of articulation around the front and back of the figure and underside. But I would go back to what I was saying when I first started. I still would encourage you to kind of have this piece centered right at that couch. Have it really be about that, and then let it spread out. But a lot of you folks are doing that, and I think that sort of makes sense. It's kind of the middle piece and everything. It's almost like this idea that it's the center core where everything's kind of radiating out from it. The other thought would be if you brought up the figure in the red more, you could contrast them more by brightening right behind, and that could be your lead-in. So, either way, kind of make a decision that way, but I think definitely by pushing these elements continually now is the way to go. So good. I think that's looking grand. So I would just then think about it and go right into that middle and just see where it goes. Sounds good. Okay. All right, Claire. Hello, Claire.
Sorry.
Good. I know you got it. And believe me, I know what happens here too. It spots out. I talk to people around here, so just we'll all be patient with it. How's it going? You have a good week?
Yeah, it's been good. I got my fingers vaccine last week, so.
Oh, congrats. Did you have any reaction?
No, it's fine.
Oh,
I
okay.
went to the store for like a couple hours and then it was
Oh, I'm so glad. Which one did you get?
uh,
Oh, good. Yeah, that one has a quicker turnaround time, so you're lucky. Yeah, mine was 4 weeks in between. That was a long time. Yeah, so yeah, I hope your second one works out just as well. So that's good. We'll keep our fingers crossed. All right, so let's see what we're looking at with your really developed figures.
yeah, very
They really are, Clay. They look good. I think your piece is really coming on beautifully, and I love the pattern that developed on the couch. I think that made a big difference. Could you just lift it just a little higher? There you go. And then I also like the balance of the greens and different points of reference down below. So I think you're leading us in nicely. You've got a nice characterization of the front figure. That's almost like your guide, and the arms being leading you back to the model that's in the couch, and then the ones kind of aloof or off on their own behind the lamp. So I think all that's reading well. I would just say that you could contrast a little bit more of some of the individual parts of the body that's drifting down again. Like for instance, on the Satan figure, if you just the way you articulate the one leg that's to the far right, you could go a little bit more on the one to the left, and you're not too worried about that cast shadow, and then play up the hand more. Then it's going up towards the shoulder, you can lighten up a little bit more there. But I think it's really time to dig into that laying down figure, really get that face going, really build up that lifted arm, get that a little bit more. And then with the standing figure in the back, the hair is really draping down, which is great, nice to give space. But it's like really building that midsection of the body out, clarifying. So you got a lot to do, but it's all going to be fun stuff. And the good news of it is, Claire, is that it's pretty finished in each stage now. Like you could say in a more painterly term, there's something nice and developed about it. But then it's, you can also take it further. It's not gonna, be bad. It'll be great. What do you think? You feeling good about that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that really gives me like what I want to do is like I kind of want to bring, I guess, like the development that we start like in the figures kind of out into the rest of the painting and have that kind of, I don't know, it doesn't need, like I definitely want the figures to still kind of be like the priority and be sort of the most detailed and most
Yeah.
piece. But I also don't really want like the figures to kind of like cut out and paste it.
That's right. That's right. So Claire, what's the solution to that? What's the solution? Because that's something you have to think of as you're painting something in any kind of space that makes it set in a space. Do you know what the solution to that is?
I think you're gonna talk about like light shadow and making sure that like those lights, like kind of like the yellow and orange and blue like reflect onto the body, and then also like making sure like the cast shadows of the figures.
Go into the space. Go into it. That's right. But you really hit on something too with the color. And I would add into the idea that when we're looking at a transition, like if you're looking at my hand, for instance, we have the dark side here, the light side there, it's darker behind there and light over here. In both those cases, there's not a really high contrast, the difference between this part and that, or this part and that. It's just that that can be a little softened. And the way to soften that is to bring some of the color from what's behind into that object and some of the object into the adjacent color behind it. And it just softens it a little bit. But it doesn't mean you don't have to get clear with it. You could actually make that a razor sharp edge. It's just if you manage it so that it doesn't become too much of a line and too contrasty, then it'll just pop right around. It'll be great. So that's a good thing to learn for somebody that I think, from what I'm seeing with your work, you want to see these forms. You want to really see that, and that means you're going to really sculpt it. Now, speaking from somebody, I do too. That's the way I paint. So that you got to think about that transition between those 2 points. That it really becomes, and it's a drawing thing. It's working that form and that edge and that clarity. So it'll really bring it out. Oh wait, I'll tell you one more trick too. If you've got that whole edge on it, right? And then you've got a brush with no paint on it at all, just with my eraser like that, and you just push on the end of it like that with those 2 wet surfaces, it'll slightly soften. Be much less aggressive than pulling a knife over it. But you just bat at it like that with your brush, and it'll just push that space back. A lot. All right, so give both of those things a shot and see where you go with it. All right, good seeing you. Yeah, you bet. All right, Tara, how are you doing? How's it going?
I'm doing okay. I'm staying at my mom's place because my economy is making me feel quality.
Yeah.
I know really stuff coming out. So I even keep testing yesterday. They started having COVID-19,
Oh, how about that? Yeah, you really have to, because anytime you don't feel well, you have to check it. That's really true. Well, I hope that's the case. You probably don't. I mean, considering how many times you're just going to feel ill regardless. But yeah, it's scary. It's definitely scary. Oh. Yeah, right. I think that's good. That's a good point. Oh, wow, good. That's pretty out there. That'll be nice. Something to look forward to as well. So good. So have you been able to focus on some of your work and you get some things done, or has it been kind of challenging? No, you're not. Not yet. I'm just saying for the final. Oh, I see. Oh, I get it. Oh, so no, we were continuing on this pose. So you know what, then don't worry about it. Today we'll just be focusing on, just a small study. You can even work on one figure. And then when that figure's not posing, you can do the space around it. So you can do that. Or Terry, you know what you could do, which might be a little bit of a stretch out for you based on my lecture today. What about if you did things through your imagination using the figure too? Oh yeah, good, very nice. Very nice. That's good.
My portrait class is almost being finished.
Oh good, very nice. Very good. So you really are going in that direction. That looks good. So there's a nice reality to it, but it's also based on a lot of imaginative things coming into it. So it's good. So if you want to work on one of those too, you can do that because that's building towards an inevitable end of things as well. But I would also recommend just building in one figure and then bringing in some of this space around it, something you want to work with, but have it derived from that figure. That'd be good. That'd be cool. All right, good. I hope you feel better. All right. All right, let's see. Anna. How's it going? So, yeah, good. Did it go okay? Good. That's pretty good if that's all that happened. That's good for you. Excellent. Wow, that's coming together, really. Yeah. Yeah, because that's right. Once you're glazing, then you're really not supposed to work back into it again, except for more glazes. Except depending on what glaze medium you use. You could do it if you had an alkyd, but if you're using the traditional method of the linseed oil, you're absolutely not. That's supposed to be the final stage. Um, but when I last looked at it, you hadn't brought up the figure on the couch as much, and you also had that box still in the front. So I think by bringing this up and having that be the color that it is and take away that box, I think you really got something here. It's much clearer, it's much more about that space. I think it really looks good. It's really nice. Good. Good. I think that's great, and when you do that too with the ones in the back, you really have to think about that graphic quality you've got to them, and make sure that that negative space is reading as you want it for the gesture, and how it implies a sense of total figure, and then the one that's in the far left. It really, because you're having so much of it covered by things overlapping, make sure that we believe it's overlapping and not just missing. So that's going to really be sometimes bumping out a shoulder a little bit more, extending the hand beyond the abdomen, just something like that would give us more. And then in the lying down figure, I think a lot of what this gesture is that overlapping arm. So I would definitely dive right into that and really see if you can build that shoulder, that forearm, hand as it exists, the arm as it relates to the near abdomen, which you darken a lot, which could work, but you have to be careful that that doesn't become like a hole and it just becomes something that builds that figure too. No, that figure should be warm because it really relates. Because I think it would you create such an artifice by going more blue light. I think more the idea is that this is the reality, as in this is the person's dream, and you don't want it so much that it's like a warm outside. This is cool. It's more like one's real, with the warm and cools, And then the other one is all about that hotness of that memory. I know. So there's something really kind of quirky and imaginative that's coming up with this. I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of going into these kind of the best parts of like a surrealism. Yeah. What was something that was so popular in the 60s? It was this idea of counterculture, right? It was this idea of, fighting the machine, going against the war, fighting what had come before it. And it's not unlike today, is it? It's kind of funny that in some ways people talk about that, but like we're almost in a period of like late 60s, early 70s again, both from clothing, attitudes, what's going on. It's also it was a time of great racial strife. It was conflict between classes. This hierarchy. Where do people want to live? People were moving back into the city after having been abandoned. So I mean, it was really, the parallels are kind of extraordinary, kind of fun. So, and you're a big part of that. The way you've grown up in the city, you think about these things. So let that come out. I think that'd be kind of a good story. Be kind of fun. Good stuff, though, man. Really nice. We're looking at some, we'll just say it at this point now. If it's Wednesday, we're looking at rain. We're just going to have to say that, because we definitely are, but not until later in the day. So I think what we'll do is go back to Laurel Hill Cemetery. Okay? I'll make the call for sure tomorrow, but just so when I'm talking to you, I can tell you now that's where I think we're going. And it doesn't look like it's supposed to rain for 4 inches, so we shouldn't have any problem at all. But we'll know for sure tomorrow what's going on. All right? So that's part of the plan. All right, good going. All right, so hello, Grace. How are you? Are you enjoying the spring blossoms and the world out there that's starting to spring back to life?
I am enjoying spring so much.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So where are you going with all this? Because the last time I saw any artwork of yours, still up. So very surrealistic thing is spinning. Oh yeah, the sink, yeah. Mm-hmm. So talk me through it, because my first impression is this idea of this altered reality, because I'm looking at it from the top and counting the things, but then it's also very specific according to the optical devices and the spreading out of things, which by the way has to be incorporated in the floorboards. But that being said, is that where you're going with that? You want us to kind of see like another dimension, or where are you going with it?
I just wanted to make my bathroom from like an aerial perspective, and I think it gives an interesting like modeling experience. Like when I'm looking at it, it feels like the painting is more articulated than if I was gonna put a fingernail. So I was gonna put a lot of things in it, and then I felt they would be redundant, so I'm like working on the space more, and there's like a bit of things I want to do on it. So.
Well, compositionally, there's a couple of key things you're doing, and one is, of course, having the subject of the sink in the mirror off to the upper left, and then showing us the top of it gives us I would agree, sort of figurative sense to it. But then you've got these very precise wedges, one of that blue on the left, and then the violet, which incorporates into the optical of the orange. So I would encourage you to include more of that shadow that seems to be appearing on the left. some of this reflection and some shadow coming on that left yellow wall, because that can continue that optical curve as it's going around, which then would echo your curve of your sink and then bring us kind of in a sense of like a helix going down. That could be kind of fun.
Okay, wait, are you talking about like this, like blue here?
Yeah, well, that was that triangle, but then move up to the left, go at the blue again. Put your hand on the blue, and then go up, and then left. That's that area of the wall. I'm thinking if you were to relate that curve you have in there even more, like you can play it up a little more, that would then really incorporate into that orange and purple that's around to the right hand side. And it would continue that curve where you have from the top of the wall over here and all that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah, because if it'd be like this shape, you know, and then you'd have another shape like that, so it would become like these, almost like you know, like in water, the way that the reflections or the waves go around that optical curve. So, but then here lies the problem of the floorboards. So, what do you think about that?
I don't see an issue because they follow. Okay, I'm gonna wait. Sorry.
So surreal, it's funny.
Okay.
And I like the way you're holding the towel.
Okay. So we follow the perspective lines. So it's like vertical and then like.
Yeah, but aren't you arcing
Yeah.
it? So could that one thing follow the, yeah? Because if you're gonna do an arc on everything, but then in one part of it not, then it makes it look like it doesn't belong. Unless again, that's your story. That could be your story. That you know everything's kind of gone in partnership here except for one thing.
No, I don't know.
So that's gonna talk too. So in a sense, what you've got is that same arc like that, that's following a wall, like I was talking about before. And then of course your floorboard in the center will be absolutely straight, but as it then just goes away, it's gonna start to curve. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm noticing that the wall is very long.
Yeah.
How does your wall curve? I don't know. I'll figure it
Well,
out.
be careful of that, because if you don't curve it that much, then it will not be constant with your main curve of your object.
I see. Yeah.
So again, it's the idea of not that you're doing it, but just be consistent about it. You know? So the blue I'm assuming is like a rug or something. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's those two reddish dashes above the drainage?
Yeah. I painted over something. I'm going to be doing the faucet.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, that's pretty funny. Yeah, because you could title sink with two red dashes.
Yeah. Will not be there.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I like it. Right now, the part I like the most is the reflection in the mirror. Yeah, I'm really jamming that. I think that's great. Yeah, it's looking good. It's looking good. So, all right. So keep going with it, and I agree with that. I think things can allude to the figure. They don't have to have the figure. And obviously, there's a curving, which is figurative, and then we also have this kind of oculus, which is figurative. So there's a lot of things going on this way. But since you're kind of keying into a observed but also altered reality, I can buy into that too.
Yeah, I might add a shadow, like my shadow on the bottom right corner.
It'd be kind of fun. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, shadows can be cool, you know, because again, it's kind of like emphasizing the light aspect of things, but not really overly embracing the light.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So going forward, Grace, I think you know you're on an interesting trajectory, but I continue to keep exploring like who's Grace and who's Grace as the artist. You know what I mean? Because like you know, where does that show? Where does that go up? You know, and it's like you know, and I think that's a good thing to keep thinking about, you know, and it's like, is the medium I'm using the best medium to express this? Could I bring in something else? What if I adhered something to it? What if I took something away? What if I had part of something? You know, that can be brought into the idea too, you know. It's like a walk that you walk about. You know, like Grace walking through right by Love Park, you know. Sans mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's fun stuff, but it's kind of like in a sense, it's like a metaphor for your journey, you know?
This painting?
Well, no, your art quest. Yeah, art becomes a metaphor for your journey.
Oh, no, really, that's kind of just, like, what life is painting and what physics is.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
that's what you kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's good, Grace. I like what's going on. I think that's good. So, yeah, it is funny though when we think about memories of things because they're a little bit disjointed, aren't they? And they all come, but then we kind of bring them together to tell a story. But are they really together? It's like random bits.
I know, right? Like, I've been thinking about a lot of the stories I tell about certain things, and like, I can tell a totally different story and kind of like rewrite the whole mess. And like,
Right. That's right. And so when you're making art, you can rewrite that artwork by what you're emphasizing, what you're de-emphasizing, or how you're essentially telling it. That's right. Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of fun in a sense because you're so much in control of something that went off and you're not in control of much of anything. You know? So it's kind of wild, you know? So there we go. But I think it's springtime. Springtime. That's the key. All right, is Tali there? Hello, Tali. Hello, Tali. Tali, where have we found Tali? Are you in West Philly?
There,
Okay, cool.
yes.
And what are you working on?
Down with the washroom, so
Yes, yeah, I like the way it turned out, Tali. Good luck with it.
thanks, thank you.
I think you had a nice cohesion that happened with that painting of very recognizable space. I can really occupy that whole foreground as it goes into that deeper space, which I don't think you've always fully achieved. You had these bits and pieces of information that made us believe that, but that really, I believe it is a
I found
solidity.
because I written probably 95% of it on site, but like the stuff that I did in the studio was like really simple, but it didn't take much time or anything, but
Yeah.
really helped me to see what was actually happening in the painting.
Good, good. I'm glad you feel comfortable doing that, and that's pretty essential. Yeah, I'm glad you feel comfortable doing that, and it's pretty essential. It's pretty essential that you do that. There really isn't any artist that doesn't do that unless they're really on that moniker of, I have to be there for every second of that outdoor experience.
Yeah, that's so weird.
It becomes sort of almost like a belief system or something. I'm all down with that. I think that's great if that's where you're coming from with it. But if it's going to make a better artwork, I always feel like you have to do whatever you have to. That's your responsibility.
Yeah.
It's in a sense your job.
So, yeah, so I started painting down the street, but I went a couple days ago, and then I went back this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like, I don't know, it was feeling pretty chaotic, and it was really get a hold on it, so I brought it back home, and I've been trying to work on it.
All right, let's take a look at it.
So, yeah, so it's kind of really nice, but it's not like
I'm actually enjoying these very chaotic camera movements. You know, 'cause- Yeah, skunk gets on there. It's just the littlest little camera. It's like it's amazing all that can happen. And with mine, I've got this weird little light too. It's like,
yeah, it's not going really very well. So bad. Sorry.
yeah, but it's not like I can't see it, Tyler. Come on.
Yeah, yes. When you see it this way, when you see it this way, you kind of.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see it. Oh, Tyler, that looks great. That looks really good. No, I really like it. I think there's a couple things that I of course love that car situation because what you've done is you've allowed like a yin and yang. You know, it's like they're going in opposite directions. You know, so I love that. And then you got that figure right in the center of the two. That and then what are those birds in the air?
Yes.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, I love that.
But
Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot about like I want to do something that has it's like they simplify the air
Right.
like
Right.
like emphasize the atmosphere of it and like
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm kind of like when I get this started off with like very literal color and I kind of just been like
Yep.
making it
Yeah.
like not
Yep.
like out and stuff, but
Yeah.
like I haven't been bold enough or something, or like maybe I need to like insert a little bit more like ideas of like how large the
Yep.
color space
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Like this, what do you think about this? I know that this dark space is a problem, but
It's too dark. Yeah. It's too dark.
do you think, but like, because I'm not sure, because I want the light to be, well, you can see by.
Yeah. The middle distance. You want. So Tali, you can still darken around it and have that light come up. It's just to what degree. And so, you know, if you're thinking about black and white contrast, sure, you darken this foreground, that middle distance a lot, and that'd become very secure against the very light behind. But if you very simply just lighten that area that you were interested in with that light as it hits in the building, and the figure, the cars, and that road back there, and make that almost like an impressionist painting kind of light, and then the rest of it kind of right. Sure. Sure. Yeah. That's right. That's right. And there's a long history to this too. That is the device that the Dutch painters, who were just masters of landscape, employed all the time. They called it middle distance light. It would be a way of having, sometimes it'd be a raking light coming in, but other times it'd be this idea that there'd be this illumination that would draw your eye out. That was the point of it, was to draw it into the scene like that. And so, yeah, you don't have to go too contrasty in here in the front. You just don't make it, you kind of make it the way it is. You just become less contrasty and brighter back there, and all of a sudden we'll switch it on you, and that'll become
Yeah,
the
and that's kind of the thing about it, because you guys kind of like going back and forth between like,
right,
like
right,
especially because our colors back here that
right.
are really like this
Saturated, yeah, yeah, yeah,
twice more,
sure,
and like I don't like kind of having it,
yeah.
but I also was like kind of like thinking like do I have to sacrifice this for like the unity of the day?
No, God, no.
Solution.
Yeah, you could definitely do that. Definitely, and make it sort of like you do when you think about a window. Because in a sense, that's your window. You know, you're looking through it. Yes, so bring that up, and that'd be fun. And that can be the key that you can, you know, play up when you're in the studio because you're more aware of that and you're holding on to that. And then when you're out on location, then that's when you can really work these other elements. You know, and yeah, it's a great start though. That could actually be a whole series of paintings, I would think. Pretty powerful.
Well, yeah, this is like kind of similar, I think, in some ways to the, I don't know if you remember the painting I did. It was like
The park?
over the picture. It was in my backyard in Oakland, and it was like there's like a cavity, there's like
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
like
Yeah.
so it's kind of like I was thinking about that being like the subject matter of the conversation, but I was like I wanted this to like sort of sit more like less be about like the dramatic light and
Yeah.
like come together instead of separate.
That's right, and you know, since you can do that now, you might as well embrace that capability. And it can really come together. But here's some pluses. You didn't go too dark with the foreground, even though you wanted that contrast. You didn't go too dark with the sky, even though there was this big cloud banks coming in. So those are really two good things. You need to go a little bit darker with that underhang of that gas station thing. Yeah, and then watch how light your windows are getting as it relates to its near part of the brick on the left. Like even though they'll reflect a lot, you don't want them to look like they're little blood beacons amongst all that light. You know, so but other than that, you're in good shape. Yeah. This is something grand. And what's that size? I can't really tell. Was it 18, 14,
No, it's bigger. It's
22?
probably 20 by 24.
Oh, nice. That's a big size. Good. Excellent. Nice. And what's it on canvas or is it on?
Things.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like with the canvas we have like on board, I kind of like get really like marky.
Yeah.
I feel like really.
Because it absorbs in, right?
Really.
Yeah, it really absorbs in. Yeah, you're good. I'm going to give you a piece of linen so you can try that. I'll give you a piece of oil prime linen. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be fun for you to try that so you can, you know, because the paint stays. That's when you're looking at paints in the museum, the reason why that paint stays so fresh like that and not be particularly thick is because the brush stroke you put on a piece of linen stays. That's it. It doesn't go away. And on canvas, it just keeps absorbing in. So I've been working on a panel and lately. It's funny how you kind of go in these series. I've been working on paper for so long, now I'm back to panel.
Yeah. Stanley Lewis is always painted on paper.
Yeah, but I think it mounts on panel, so it becomes like panel.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's coming into this painting. It was like all texture and like it was so hard to work on.
Right.
Like I think with my the waterfront as well, like I started it off really thick and I was like I'm gonna keep just thick and keep going and like get to you go back to it and there's just something like I don't know if it's just mental or like but it feels really confusing to like work back into like all of the texture.
I know. And sometimes the texture goes away from what you're trying to describe. So that's where if you take the side of your paint knife, you can scrape it like that and get rid of some of that alternate texture and then work over it. So, and then sandpaper too can be good for that.
Yeah, I never done that.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah.
He does that?
Yeah, he scrapes. Yeah, absolutely scrapes.
He stands?
No, but I think he scrapes with a knife. Yeah. No, he's not sanding. But you know, a lot of what artists do though to get that unified plane and those unified areas is to sand it. Because that helps soften it and then you can build back over it. And that just becomes part of the process.
Yeah.
No, I think he's working with that spontaneity of Mark and that reaction that's happening in every session. You know, so
Right. Yeah, he's like working all around.
yeah, it's like this. And it's like anti-facile. Like if it looks too Sargent-esque, like for instance, like big beautiful brush, it would be like a disaster. So it's supposed to be all about that kind of, you know, I'm finding it, I can't find it, you know, that search.
Right.
You know, which
on the physical level, like not place where they're all like massive approach.
I think you have to use twice as much paint. So with you know who taking half your paint every time, it makes it kind of hard. coming back with like a little kid, little hand, like a little birdie holding, the paint.
It's unusual.
No, I don't know about that, Tony. I haven't seen no One Direction so far. Just from the outside looking, just to tell you. Just to tell you, maybe in the studio that goes away, but man, I'm not seeing. I was thinking I gotta fix your easel too. Your easels are still in pieces over on it's over there. I know I gotta get to that.
I'm not, I shouldn't be handling one of those things. Anyways, I think you gotta let them
No, I think it could be all right. That was just something I gotta rethink it because it's a design flaw. So it's actually totally not your fault. It's too much is relying on that one point like that. And there's got to be a way around it. So I'm gonna have to think it out. It might take a little while. You gotta let it sit for a while. You come up with solutions sometimes when you let it sit a little bit longer. All right, Tyler, so see what you can do. I think that's a good start, though. You're definitely getting space, though. You were never getting that before. That's good. Your pieces were more topography like this. Now you're moving right in from an early stage. It's really moving your eye in. A good start, yeah, absolutely. Yeah? Okay. So I don't think this is a bad thing, actually. I think it's something that newspapers stop. And it will be much better than the signs themselves. Sure. Sure. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Mhm. Okay. Good. 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 Yeah. I'll tell you what, if you can do what you want, but I'm just going to give you a recommendation. I say no. I wouldn't talk to them. I would not. And the reason why is because you don't want to blame that. People who are going to get more mileage out of it is by inferring that that's what happened. And yeah, but that's the whole point. That's right. That's the whole point. And no one else would work. You see, for instance, this happens. What it reminds me of is it happens with these lectures. And you put those signs up. And the coaching marketing comments do all the signs. And so yeah, there's nobody else that would benefit from other than that. So the question is, what we want to do then is let people come up with their own idea about it. Don't confirm with them. I would not, yeah, there's no problem. And then the other thing is we don't want to contact with a friend that's going to be anything that they can use. We don't want to do that. And we no, of course not. But I just think, I think we're going to be much more knowledge on the science and, or just, I don't know, really, just really have to be part of this whole, like, world league people. Here they are trying to focus all this monstrosity on us. But not only that, we dare to claim these science. We don't say anything. We just can't believe it all and take it all at once. Who would take every one of the signs? Even the signs down in the well, Steve said, Yeah, just so like, yeah. 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 Well, the best thing about it is we'll get people, we'll get a group of them, and the best thing about it is we'll get people, and if you throw down, you know, public lives, that is solutions, that's what we're saying. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it's something. It's good. Something. But, you know, it also shows that we're going to do that. Yeah, it's to reach out. I think in the long run, it's going to be more miles than because we have to be things to remember. Everybody knows which one to take for us. Look at what's happening. So it's that yeah, you don't want that to be the case. Now, Christian wants to well, by saying with confidence, you are good to know right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Everyone is exactly. Now, if you get anything by the way, you must serious. Yeah, as you say, you're not feeling vulnerable, you're violent. Hey, fun stuff. All right, ready, oh, we which they only do it in us. Oh, good. We put those out. Well, I know, it's just, it's so far where everything's going. All right, Reg. How you feeling, Peg?
How are you feeling?
Yeah. Bit busy. It's becoming the norm now.
You said it's gonna be the norm now.
Dizzy time. It's craziness. All the stuff we have to deal with, huh? Craziness. Started hanging the ASC work today.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah. It's hard to believe it's that time already, isn't
Yeah, almost the end of this year.
it? Yep. Ended the year as we know
So do you teach in the summertime?
it. No.
Okay.
I used to. You know, when you first start teaching, you teach whenever you can, but one of the benefits of getting older and having other sources of income, you don't need it.
Right.
Because at this point, I kind of need the break.
Yeah, it's good to have everything burnt out, you know.
Well, yeah, you're so focused the whole semester on everybody and all the kids and everything you're doing. And it's good, it refreshes us, and then we can come back, you know, with more renewed energy and positivity.
Those paintings that were in the shadows, is that are those paintings that put you through surgery sometimes?
Yeah, I don't go the whole summer, I go for a few weeks, but yeah, that's the place. So hopefully this summer will be a little bit more normal.
So, yeah. It's like it says, if you didn't have summer last year.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like we didn't have a year.
Yeah. Sort of like, possible to start the purgatory.
Yeah,
You're sitting in an open week.
exactly.
Well, I think whether it's a normal than not, people are just gonna be angry.
Yeah,
And it seems to feel that, I believe the lines were all in line for vaccinations,
yeah,
that people are just gonna try regardless,
yeah,
of the wordings, as long as it maintains, certain kinds of things like this, not convenience,
yeah.
distancing. I can't say that for everybody.
Yeah, there's people that really haven't bought in the whole time. So the ones that are going to be conscientious now are the ones that have already been conscientious.
One of my friends, he kind of like, he chided me for taking that time off when I didn't know if I had COVID and I had to get tested.
Yeah,
Because in Pittsburgh police, it's a little bit more lax.
sure.
I mean, you were saying that he couldn't understand how I told myself to use the word.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'll tell you, we appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't think if I had something, I definitely not want to spread it around.
No, no,
Doesn't seem to make sense.
no. It's really just for short-term gain. Yeah, I think, we're going to have to start thinking more of the we and less of the I.
Yeah. Well, I think because folks that the word to live, some folks think more of the I than the we.
Yeah, I think so. Which, sometimes we have to think that way too. But,
Yeah, because it seems like if you're not factoring enough to survive in this country,
yeah,
you're out on the streets,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Nobody wants it, especially right now.
So when you filled out that form, did you say that you had all the symptoms or anything, or did you say you don't have pneumonia?
Originally,
Yeah,
originally when I came in, or I tried to come in, I guess it was on Tuesday,
yeah,
I filled out the survey,
yeah.
and I said, I did have some of these symptoms.
Oh, what did it say?
Oh, it told me to shut down on me, it basically said, you can't come in, you don't have access to the building. Someone will be in contact with you.
I wondered, yeah, because I wondered what would ship it off.
And then Jimmy reached out to me.
Oh.
Like, within 10 minutes.
10 minutes, really?
Yeah, 10 minutes and you don't have to consider that.
Oh my goodness.
And,
Well, that answers that question.
yeah. Told me I couldn't come in. He said that I had to go and get a COVID test.
Wow.
Only after getting the COVID test and the testing, then he said that I could go out.
Right, yeah, so you only had that one negative test though.
Yeah, I had that one. I had one test.
I see.
And then the previous week I had, because I get tested every week.
Yeah,
So the previous week I had tests also. Then I'm going to get a test the next week.
right, right. Now, that's pretty wild. So that answers that. I was wondering. So tell me, you do not have entrance.
Yeah, and red letter, like gold red lettering.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I told him the alternate says denied.
Wow. I'm surprised it didn't have that big bumping noise. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, that's what it felt like when I was there. It shut down.
It shut down everything on Sunday. I didn't know anything until Sunday.
Wow. How about that?
And you can't check off your symptoms you get.
No, I can't.
It's just a whole list running down of all the symptoms. So once you say you had any of them,
Any?
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering that.
you're not coming with
It's almost like the Stasi would surround you.
like, my brother, he said, oh, it's a lot. Just filled out the survey like we usually. I said, I don't think you'll come to
Say, that's not how I ride.
No.
It's not how I ride. So when you filled it out this morning, did it remember that you'd had that other one, or did it?
It took a minute to come up. When
Oh,
I
wow.
asked people to leave, it was, it like they didn't want to process.
Didn't want to boot it,
But
yeah.
I did it 2 or 3 times,
Huh?
and by the last time, it let me through.
Wow. No additional calls from Jimmy?
Would you say?
No additional calls from Jimmy?
No, he didn't call me, he emailed me.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. And then he asked me what symptoms I had after this.
Brave new world.
Yeah. Full of challenges.
Yeah, Jimmy's had a busy couple weeks,
Oh, I bet.
and then he's tired. He wants everybody to be vaccinated and be done with it.
Yeah, I could feel that. But the thing is, I've been reading that even people with vaccination would do in the hospital with COVID.
Yeah, but not as many. You know, it's much less of a chance.
Right. And then if I had gone in, well, they had pretty much did something with something with Johnson vaccine.
Yeah.
But they had me logged in since the week before that.
Wow.
That's the vaccine I was using. And no, I didn't have a choice.
Yeah, right.
It's because of the air. So we'll see what we like next week. I was going to start next week, but I don't know. Early after that.
That's good. Soon it'll be over.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, there's not more hurdles that I have to jump over connected to.
I know that too.
Connected to COVID, it's exhausting.
I know. I was so disheartened having to be home confinement last week. It's just so bad. It's like, really? Come on.
Right? Sometimes your body has to want to get up, and sit down, chill out.
Sit down, will you?
Yeah. Especially if the sun is really busy. That's.
Yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah, this has been a trying year already. We thought it would be better.
Yeah, I remember the time last year, the international people were saying, I can't wait till after the New Year's, it's gonna go back to normal. But it takes a minute, you know.
Yeah.
Plus, there's a lot of systems that have changed just because of COVID.
Yep.
So it's
Yeah, I agree.
a whole bunch of adjustments.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's ever going to go back to the normal level of COVID.
Well, in some ways, still, you hope it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's, it's not all bad. I mean, some of that came about because, but then in other ways, it's like, oh, God. And people are genuinely nice to each other. Definitely seen that. Seems to be a little more empathy. Let's hope. A little more of I got mineism. Yeah, that's kind of manifesting itself, and I've got my vaccine. What about you?
Oh, yeah.
I got mine.
It kind of reminds me of, when you go vote and you get a little sticker.
Yeah, right. How did you put that sticker on?
I'm surprised they didn't give you all unvaccinated stickers.
Yeah, I got one. I know, I'm putting it on. Yeah, people were posting it. I think that's kind of mean. The ones that are waiting.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they didn't make it an extra holiday for the vaccine, like when the first vaccine came out.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Just make it a holiday like voting, and everybody could. But they just didn't have enough, I guess.
Yeah, that's one of the.
Now they have too much. They said there are people that are missing appointments.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Just get it done. Just get it.
Yeah, they just.
That's the issue, they just wait for everybody and not have to go to the scheduled appointment.
It's not me.
I mean, if I could, I would do the same thing. You know?
Sure. That's what you're trying to do. Well, they're talking about bringing J&J back the end of this week.
Oh, yeah, because it's a one shot, right?
Yeah, so maybe you can reschedule for that. You need to.
I don't know. I think I'd rather do the Pfizer.
I think you're in better shape for that.
Yeah.
It's stronger too.
Yeah, the J&J, I feel like has 70.
Yeah, it's like
70-some
80 or
percent.
something. Yeah, that's not enough.
Effectiveness.
That's not
Yeah, I go old school. I go Pfizer. It's Pfizer.
Yeah, but everybody's holding on to those cards now.
Those cards.
Yeah, you get a card for your vaccination. It's a passport.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They write it out when you got it and what it was.
Oh, so you can be free to travel.
Yeah, and so you're supposed to take a phone recorder, and so then you can show that. Yeah, they might use that for traveling and getting into arenas, and
Wow.
that's what I mean by. Yeah, it's not so fair. Yeah.
I'm surprised they don't have a thing where you can walk in and be the thousandth
Yeah,
person to
right.
get vaccinated, you win a prize.
Yeah,
Balloons erupt, the confetti comes down.
that's right. Wonder that will happen with this. Yeah, we'll see it in the newspaper. Medusa Wilson. It's colder, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not too bad.
It's not as cold as it's ever been.
No. It feels like it's like a story. How cold has it been? All right, Vanessa, let's see how it's going. Where's your dog? Hey, Vanessa. Where's your dog? All right, let's see what's going on. Oh my gosh, you got a lot of clouds in, yeah. You got some chairs in? Wow, you did a lot. Sure, sure. I think that was good. The only problem is I do like the chairs, they're just a little big. Um, if they were closer to the lying down figure, absolutely, they'd be that size. But, and that is one of the big downsides of invention is that you often have to think about scale as it relates to its near neighbor. And then, yes, you do them again, unfortunately, to bring them down, but you had the right idea with them overlapping. Or if you just kept them in that same position overlapping, you could just scale them down a little bit. About a third less. The leg looks better. You got the front and back now. Good that. And then, yeah. I know those changes a little bit, doesn't it? But I think the clouds give it some real interest. Yeah. Yeah, it's really, it's so much a part of how you encounter these spaces out there. We don't seem separate from the clouds. They really are a big part of it. Yeah, sounds good. And then when you get back to the figure in the upper part, just think about how overall dark that face is going to be, and then the planes of it, where probably the front plane of the face would be a little bit lighter, not the side. So like coming down from the front of the cheek, forehead, upper lip, chin, that kind of thing. Good. Nice. Nice. All right, Claire, how's it going? All right. Oh yeah, look at that. Wow. That's dramatic drapery. That's cool. Yeah, and I think it relates to the pattern you have up over the figure. But I always find personally that if you've got a scene that has so much to do with a model moving around, and then you've got a scene in itself, it's always fun to look at different parts of it. It's not like you have to just build up the whole thing and then go to the next. You can really work them area by area like that. Um, and then it's also creating more of a focal point too, which is good. So yeah, you're gonna get that big drape going, get that space between, maybe darken that edge as it intersects between the wall and the edge of the drapery. Yeah. And then think about the swags that are going to counter it that are underneath the figure. So you've got this, and then you got that. So it's just a lot of dramatic kind of curves like that. To really plan them off. Yeah, I say work wherever you feel like it because there's a lot to do. But next week for sure, you're going to really have to zero in and say, all right, this is going to be my area I'm going to work on. Now I'll just kind of ignore the rest of it. So that way you bring it a little bit more to completion. Okay? Good. All right, let's see. Let's go to Tara. Or what have you been working on today? Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. So I think with this one, I love the fire and I like the symbols of that around it and the hair in between. But what are you using for the source for the figure?
I tried work on the leaves for the fire.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, so then they look more like wings. Yeah, I got it. That makes sense. And then some of that transition of the hair is going in. Yeah. What about the light that's on that neck? Maybe that can be a little bit less.
I decided to show that I showed you. I took a picture from X-Men Kid Guy.
Okay.
I used this
Oh yeah. Oh, I see.
pink adjusted different braids in it.
Sure. So I see. So that's sort of the fire as it's on the body itself. Yeah. So you're gonna do more bits of fire breaking out on the back as it goes down, or you doing?
I think they're all Christmas.
Mhm.
Christmas Eve.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And then I have one picture I did with my own idea.
Oh, right. Right. Oh, I see. All right, got it. So then that's coming from that. So go back to your painting again for a second. Now that I understand it. Oh, I get it. All right. Huh. So, because I thought, what you had for the wings, because they're so light, I thought they were further in the distance. But I see now they're coming from the back, and that's why that back looks smaller, right? And I see that light coming from it. I would maybe just go a little less bright as it encounters the skin of the back. Just make it a little bit more like that ochre that you have around that edge of it, and then that would make the light come around the head more, and then envelop that, and then that could be part of that lift, like the angel lifting up kind of thing. Oh, powerful. That's good stuff. Well, it's fun to work on. Good job. And that came from X-Men, you said? The image that you came from an X-Men thing? Like X-Men? Yeah. All right, cool. Hey, popular culture, it's around us everywhere.
We get happy started being convenient. The laser becomes survivor.
Right, right. Rising from the masters, yeah, I get it. I get it. All right, sounds good. Okay, good. All right, Kate, or Catherine. So, do you do Catherine when people are mad at you? Like, does your mom say that? Catherine.
I really appreciate that from like professors and stuff.
Because that's what we see.
Compliment.
Yeah, it's because, yeah.
Old school, it says Catherine, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it, I know that it's sweet.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Were you ever Katie? Because the Catherines I know are Katie.
I've never been Kate.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, they say, oh yeah, Kate's too short. It's up to them. It's their name, but that's what they're always saying. That's pretty funny. Yeah, that's maintaining the brightness. That looks good, Kate. Um, yeah, that's getting there. So, let's see. I'm wondering about that blue on the couches that's going back. I mean, certainly in the scene, it makes sense in there, but I'm wondering if it could be a little bit lighter on that left-hand side as it stops right at the edge of the drapery. Maybe so that it becomes a little bit more part of it. It could be a different blue, but maybe not as dark. That could maybe bring it around. And then, you're building up that arm. I see that. That's good. So, what other colors could you use in there? What do you think? Like in those gold areas of the drapery, and then also around the arm. What colors could you use? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then what are the colors would you put into the shirt? Because it's red, right? So what colors do you put into the red to make it darker?
Um,
Right? That would certainly do it. Well, what about if you use some green? So if you use dark green and you mixed it, that would be that neutral, but you could also put it in as green and then your eye would mix it. And then it'd be like this optical charge. That could be kind of fun, kind of brighten up that, and then that could be used for some of the transition going into the skin color. Because you know, everything does have a color look to it. So if I'm looking at the skin color as it relates on the model now as they're posing, and the arm that's overlapping because it's so getting hit by the direct light has that those yellows and oranges in it. So then my eye optically is making me think of blues behind it because it's reading the complement of that color. So that can be done intellectually, but can also be seen because you know it does exist in there. You know, and I'm seeing a lot of green reflect up into the shadows. You know, because both in the brown areas and in the reds. And then purple for sure. Purple exists too. And purple being blue and red, you know, helps make a balance. And the fun thing about purple is it can really read still as purple even if it's not as dark. You know, it can still have those properties of turning form. It's a pretty strong color. That's what Kates do. So we're going to do Kates. So I always thought Doug was a little abrupt. Doug. So I often ask people to say, especially if they're asking my name, I'll say Douglas because then it's longer and it's softened a little bit. Doug is a Doug.
that's so funny. Alex,
Yeah.
Aubrey,
Yeah.
he goes by Alexander
Right.
all the time. And then when you become president, then the legislature by Alex.
Oh, I see. Then it becomes something that's like a gift. Yeah, it's like a gift here. You're part of my inner circle, you can be that. See, now if you were part of my inner circle, you'd be called Douglas, not Doug.
Oh, the other way around.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I could give people who get turned out for that and say, I want you to be part of my circle.
See, Kate, that's really nice. That's really nice. I like that. That's a good term. That's good. There's no way of shortening Vanessa. What are you supposed to say? Dan? Come on, that doesn't work. Yeah, Vanessa. They do call you Van. Ness. Yeah, I like the Ness. Ness is good. Yeah, that's good. But Vanessa's long. So it gives you pause long. It's true.
So regal.
It is. I know we should be curtsying. With Vanessa, the regal. Oh, we have the regal bands today. The red. Look how pink it looks on there. It's really dark red. Huh. Oh, it smells weird. All right. Let's see. Anna. How's it going? Anna, where are you? Are you at home or? Wow. Wow, look at that with your light-filled room. Yeah, out the window is really kind of cloudy and dreary. Wow, yeah, that's coming up. I like that. Those colors are looking great and bigger. Very nice. Yeah, they read well. I think they're coming up. I like the one standing quite well. There's a real believability. The one that's sitting is a little awkward at those legs bent. Maybe get a little bit longer in those upper legs and emphasize that knee a little bit more. See if you can feel that. And then the colors you're using, those oranges and yellows in the main body around the blues, that blue's kind of really, enveloping that figure. So there's good swag to it. So that gesture is going to be really important on both you did on the stand, but now with this lying down, that gesture, that leg as it's bending back, and that arm as it's overlapping. That big, that kind of drop, would be fun. And then I'd play up the abdomen a little bit more, the whole abdominal area that goes into the drapery, and there's a little navel, and then the edge of the undergarment. That can make a nice little subtle area. The abdomen comes forward, a little bit of that. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I think blue's the call. I think that's good. If you do yellow, then our eye's going to want to go green, and then the green's going to look a little weird. So I think if you're going to do that, you have to neutralize, and then you lose some of the color intensity. So I think you're gaining a lot from the complementary colors right now. And so that when you put more yellow back there, that'll make us think that color anyway, and you probably won't need it. You'll still imply. Implication often will have a lot more strength. In kind of a dynamic moment. Well, boy, it's certainly gone through a lot of changes, hasn't it? Yeah. I think it's opening up a new avenue for you, because, it's bringing up the things you've been gravitating to it anyway, which are really the spaces. And then it's really bringing up this idea of what they can inhabit. How you can tell a story that might have a broader meaning, and all that can really be present. And after all, that's our goal, isn't it? We're storytellers, we're entertainers, we're kind of like the court jester that's running around the court, saying, look at me, I'm acting like a fool, let's go. And they can do that. And there's something kind of nice about that, but on the other side, we're telling these illuminating stories for bringing people to a different place. No, because it was just studies, right? So now it's really going to be, you can really push in something personal. It will often mean something more to someone else. So, because, that's the other game we have, is how can we get people to care? Yeah. Yeah. I agree, but personally what happens, and this happens with Medusa, you get to know them, and it's, but I agree, I have a hard time just painting somebody I've just met, or I have a hard time painting a scene that I've just encountered. You can get more out of it if you engage in it more, and there's some interaction. But yeah, I think that's got to come through, or it just becomes like you're just documenting something. Right, right. No, no, that gets really, unless again you're photographing somebody you know, or it's yourself. So, yeah, it's a kind of interesting thing when you said that, because my first year painting class, we've gotten to the point where we're doing some figures. And so the point was, well, okay, we don't have a model available, so Medusa's have to use some images of them, so that's good. But then I started doing research. I said, do you want to look in the photo, or do you want to look in the mirror? Most all of them are going for the mirror, because they still want to have that, interaction with that form. So, yeah. Yeah. No. No, not the same way, but you know, again, if you're documenting and going it as you go, it's fine. But I mean, we turned it into sort of a color exercise, didn't we? You know, and so when you're co-opting it that way, sure, it's fine because you just, you know, you feel it almost like a vase or something. But you know, if you're trying to go beyond that, and what you think, you have to think beyond that. But I find even like, you know, like I'm working on the figure here, I'm still looking into the figure beyond what I see to what I know to bring in that anatomical part, because other than that, it's not going to be believable. There's not a readability to it. So, you know, that's that old argument of what do we truly see? You know, we don't even see something unless we know to look for it. And that's freaky, isn't it? Because then you start to realize, oh my God, what have I missed? You know, it's like, how come I didn't see that? I mean, do you guys think that sometimes like we'll say, oh, did you notice this area? You say, no, I didn't notice that. Why didn't I? You know, so it's funny how much editing we do, but that's also this excitement of learning. Because you see something you hadn't seen an hour before. It's like, wow, how cool is that? You know, and that's what we're all about. All right, good job, man. Keep it going. I'll check in with you guys once more before we shut there. Okay. Right, we just, I think that's true. You have to know who you're working with, or it's just not as much fun.
No, definitely, definitely. Because you can capture their.
Mhm. So what do you think, we have one more pose or?
Yeah, we're gonna, this is the last one.
Alright.
It's for 20 minutes and it's 3:26 now.
All right. Yeah, then next week's the final pose. Jeez.
Would you say?
Next week's the final day.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, already.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Took a loss last week.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think you needed to take last week, you know, because of the health thing, so
Right.
it was the right thing to do.
Value.
Yes, valiant. But that makes me think about the Sunday morning, what is it, the Sunday cartoons
Yeah.
from the Sunday paper,
Yeah.
the Prince Valiant cartoons or comics.
The value of it.
Do people even use that word anymore? Valiant.
I don't know. Got a lot of weight, right? Might be one to reassess.
Seeing more people wear those face masks that I was talking about.
What?
The ones that look like almost like motorcycle helmet visors.
Oh, yeah, right. Right. Oh, it's one of the new incarnations.
They have them tinted, almost like sunglasses too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
What about one that's all dirty with charcoal? Like Scott.
None of those. Plus, these masks look like they're easier to clean.
Oh, right.
You know, because all you have to do is probably hit them up with cleaner,
Yeah,
sanitizer.
Sure. Makes sense. But like you were saying, as a model, would be seems like it's a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah, that means I can have my face
Sure, sure,
out without risking myself.
sure. Well, you'll feel so much better when you're vaccinated
Yeah.
off your wrist.
Yeah, because I had to tell Scott I wasn't going to do, I think it was last year I told you.
Mm-hmm.
I did a 20-minute session and it was the last one, but I didn't have a mask on.
Oh, right.
And it was per his request, and then he asked the students too. If
Right.
they wanted, that was something they wanted.
Yeah,
But I realized that I still had to go home to where I came from.
Yeah.
You know?
you can't do that.
And
You can't do that.
the one thing I didn't want to do is infect anybody else or infect my grandma.
Of course not.
So I had to make that very clear
Yeah,
that sorry, you're gonna have the mask stays on. You're gonna have to
yeah.
figure something else out.
And,
Then I've seen these real zany masks that have a clear section where the mouth is, but all the rest of it is fabric.
oh, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that.
They're the creepy.
Yeah, I'm not that wild about it. I hear what you're talking about. Yeah, I think that one is a little over the top.
Like it's just weird to see someone's mouth just floating
But,
in a window amidst this fabric.
yeah. Yeah. Probably the next class will be the last live stream too.
Oh yeah.
It'll be the last live stream ever.
What? Oh yeah, that's right. Because everybody's supposed to come by, come back.
Yeah, it's so bad. That's the plan.
Well, you'll get to see what your model population also looks like.
Oh no. Yeah, I think we've lost a lot around other things.
But hopefully, you'll have more of a variety. You know.
We're not looking for variety, we're looking for quality.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be different. It'll be hard to share these rooms again. I'd like to have them to myself.
Yeah, you can stretch out. And
Yeah.
Pretty much
space
you-
out.
it's what's yeah. It seems like you can keep your stuff in the same place
Yeah.
without having to lock a whole bunch of it
Yeah,
up.
the only thing I do is put away my equipment,
camera?
but yeah, just in case. Don't want to leave it out in case there's a little momentary temptation.
Right. But I doubt that people are going to walk out with the Gamasol or the Gamsol.
They seem to not, so you never know. It's pretty expensive, I think, so.
Yeah. Yeah. All the art tools are expensive.
Yeah. It's getting pricey. We're getting into elitism stuff again.
No.
Yeah, it's sort of like we've survived a war or something.
Yeah.
I would think that, we kind of always know this as a time, just like everybody did when they went through the war.
I'm sure a lot of people have PTSD since COVID.
Well, I'm finding there's some, and I'm making me feel a little bit, my wife was talking about that, there's a little bit of this anxiety coming out of like how much you're going to be able to take advantage of the new freedoms and
Yeah.
like are you going to really be able to take advantage and appreciate it, or is it going to so yeah, there's a little bit of an anxiety for that.
Yeah, and I think folks want to see what happens with the vaccines.
Yeah.
Because you figure they haven't been out for an entire year
Right.
in the public, so.
Right, and they're not sure too that, I think they don't want to say it, like, they're talking about the boosters, but they also, I think, were thinking that if enough people got vaccinated, it could kind of put the brakes on this thing.
Right.
And you wouldn't necessarily have to keep treating it like it's a constant high-pitched outbreak.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard some people who haven't taken the vaccine, and they said they don't want boosters. They don't want to even think about having to have a booster every year. And this is from people who don't take flu shots.
That's right.
So I feel like some folks are just opting out of the vaccine right now.
Right.
Because they're hearing booster.
Right.
Also, does a booster shot mean you're going to have probably side effects where you have to count out, the next day of work and all that?
Sure. Yeah. But no one again knows that would you have the same reaction?
Right. Everybody's different.
You don't know. And it also could be more refined by then. You might not have as many, but you just don't know.
It's all a wait and see game.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing that really is so surreal about it is the fact that this whole thing was such a big thing to begin with. It's so weird.
Yeah.
It affected the economy and everybody so much.
And it still is affecting the economy.
Yeah, poor people are dying. That's just so heartbreaking.
Think about how many people are out of work.
I know. Or less of work, you know?
Yeah,
If you're not out of work, then you're less of work.
and nobody can see it coming.
No. And that's part of the peace. You just think now everything's a possibility. You speak thought, that's not going to happen. Now you're thinking, of course it's going to happen. That and worse.
One thing's for sure, the virus seems to want to survive at all costs.
It's tenacious.
It's very tenacious and highly adaptable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like a alien
Yeah.
movie.
It's not nice. Done everything we're supposed to.
Right.
So next Wednesday you're getting it?
Not this Wednesday, next Wednesday.
Yeah, next, yeah. The last Wednesday of the month.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah, my grandma got hers already,
Good.
and she's due to get another one, at the beginning of next month also.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's all happening. It said half of all adults have it.
And I'll be able to say, yay, I got mine too.
And,
Which one did you get? I got Pfizer. I'm fancy as Pfizer.
You are. So jealous.
I spell fancy with the PF.
That's right. And you say, oh, too bad you got the flu. Sorry.
Well, how about people that got Johnson and Johnson before they,
Sorry.
they pulled it?
Understand.
Well, that's time.
That's it. Okay. Thank you very
3:49.
much.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Drivers. Okay, troops, that is it. Okay, so next week we'll have our final class day. So, think about the resolution of these things versus just having one more 3-hour session on it. All right, and we'll start off like we did this time, where we'll talk about your work right from the beginning and plan a strategy for that day, and then go into it. All right, so let's hope for an uneventful week and a positive one. And I'm talking to mute. How about that? And I'm just talking because you see the thing glowing. Thank you. So anyway, what I was saying is next week will be, we'll do the same thing like we did this week, where we'll start off looking at your work, and then mapping out a strategy for that day for the final class. All right, and those of you like Anna that want to put a glaze on, it might be a good time to do that during the week. Put that on so it's nice and dry for the next class. And anything that you're thinking of that way, if some of the lights you're putting on need to be built up more, you can build them up more with some whites in the middle week, and that again can dry in time versus having it all be wet for next week. All right. So, and then another thing I was saying is let's hope for an uneventful week, and moving forward, and we'll embark on that, and I'll start today. And we'll all attend, but I'll have it mapped out for each of you in a block of time mapped out for that. And you'll need the work that you did in class. So about 3 of the pieces, and if there's any studies or support material or anything like that. And if you post that on the discussion section, I'll set up a section for that on our page. You'll have one just designated for that. Okay? So have a good week, and I'll see some of you sooner, but other than that, I'll see the rest of you next Monday. All right, bye.
Thanks, have a good week.
Okay, goodbye.